Fallout continues after the Washington Post announced it would not endorse a candidate for president. At least two members are resigning from its editorial board, and the Post publisher defended the decision, saying the paper was returning to its roots of not making presidential endorsements. But according to reports, it was owner Jeff Bezos who made the call. And tonight, Bezos wrote an op-ed in the Post saying Americans don't trust the media and that presidential endorsements actually create a perception of bias. He says ending them is a principled decision. Bezos went on to write this, quote, "I wish we had made the change earlier than we did, in a moment further from the election and the emotions around it. That was inadequate planning and not some intentional strategy. I would also like to be clear that no quid pro quo of any kind is at work here." Earlier today, before Bezos published that op-ed, I spoke with Marty Baron, the former executive editor for the paper. He's also the author of Collision of Power: Trump, Bezos, and the Washington Post. Marty, so good to see you. I wish it was on a day when you weren't this upset, angry. You've described this decision as a betrayal, and you've called it spineless. Tell us why.
Well, look, for the entire time that I was executive editor of the Post, Jeff Bezos stood behind us. He supported our independence with a lot of integrity, with a lot of spine, despite enormous pressure from Donald Trump. But that doesn't appear to be the case today. That's the way it was, but it's not the way it is. Look, the Post has a history and a heritage of standing up to power, to holding powerful individuals and institutions accountable, particularly the President of the United States, who is unquestionably the most powerful person in the world. And so, this decision was not made 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, outside of the election cycle. It was made right within a couple of weeks of the election itself, without any substantive discussion with the editorial board itself. So there are a lot of questions about how this was done and why this was done and why it was done right now. And it looks to be that it was because of concern over Jeff Bezos's other commercial interests, Amazon and his space company, Blue Origin.
So let's talk about that, because you wrote in your book specifically that in 2016, when asked or approached about a presidential endorsement, Jeff Bezos said, sure, why not? Talk to us about how things are so different. I mean, specifically Blue Origin, they're practically on the eve of getting contracts with NASA. And we know the biggest private space company that gets those contracts is Elon Musk's SpaceX. And obviously, Elon Musk is very close with Donald Trump.
Sure. Well, look, things are a little bit different than during the first 4 years for Trump in the White House. So if he gets in again, look, he has talked about exacting vengeance on his perceived political enemy. He's always considered Jeff Bezos to be a political enemy solely because of the coverage of the Washington Post, particularly its investigative work. Toward the end of the first 4 years, he was clearly Trump was putting loyalists in top positions, and he was running the government the way that I would expect that he will run the government if he gets back into the White House. He will put loyalists in all of the cabinet positions. He will put loyalists at the heads of all agencies. He's talked about trying to eliminate the civil service, putting loyalists in all throughout the bureaucracy, and they will seek vengeance on his perceived political enemies. So, and he's also got Elon Musk whispering in his ear, contributing an enormous amount to his campaign. And Elon Musk is a rival of Jeff Bezos in the space sector. As you pointed out, Bezos has Blue Origin and Elon Musk has SpaceX.
But do you think that's it, that specifically Donald Trump has been completely open about his willingness or his plans to seek vengeance? Because when you think back to the Washington Post's history, think about Watergate. That wasn't easy for Katharine Graham, but she knew what the right thing to do was, and the paper proceeded. Is the big difference here Donald Trump has made it clear who he is and what he'll do?
Yeah, I think that's certainly true. Trump has made clear that he intends to make people whom he believes are his political enemies, he's going to make them suffer. He's going to weaponize the U.S. government against his perceived political enemies. And he's always considered Jeff Bezos to be one of those. So it's a risk if Jeff Bezos is on his bad side. And look, if this decision had been made some time ago in a very deliberative way, well, fine. Newspapers have a right to decide not to run presidential endorsements. But this was not made in discussions with the editorial board. It was not made. They were just informed of the decision by Bezos himself.
But when you look at this decision and the same decision made by the owner of the LA Times, does this send a signal to other CEOs?
Well, I worry it does. I worry that it sends a signal to Trump that he can further intimidate Jeff Bezos, that he can lean on other media organizations, that he can threaten them. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the message to business executives in general. Look, toward the end of the Trump administration, they were already threatening businesses that didn't kowtow to Trump with losing business, with not getting contracts, with being punished. He was trying to use the Justice Department against companies in that way. So I think what we're seeing is more of the same, but maybe worse.
Yeah, I mean, now that he's completely focused on tariffs, tariffs are the ultimate way for a president to choose winners and losers. But when you think about the calculus for the business community, is it that they see that if you don't support Trump publicly, he'll come after you? But if you don't support VP Harris publicly, she doesn't have a vengeance agenda. She'll be elected and conduct business as usual.
Sure. Well, it's actually many Republicans have actually said that they should use the power of government to bring businesses into line, to make sure that they align with the Republican Party. We saw that in Florida, obviously, with Governor DeSantis and how he fought the Disney company. We've seen it in other instances with Trump, with the AT&T Time Warner merger, where he wanted the Justice Department to go after that company and to prevent that merger. So we've seen it in many, many instances. And in the case of Bezos, during Trump's first 4 years in office, he asked the Postal Commissioner to raise postal rates. First, he talked about doubling them, then tripling them, then quadrupling them. These are postal rates for package deliveries. And he intervened in a $10 billion Defense Department contract for cloud computing to try to make sure that it did not go to Amazon, which it did not.
I don't want to let you leave before we touch on this, because there have been reports that 200,000 people have canceled their Washington Post subscriptions, not because they don't love and appreciate the reporting, because they're angry about this decision. They're angry at Jeff Bezos. You have said that doing this only harms the great work that newsroom is doing. So what advice do you have for those who want to send a message?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I understand why people are upset. But as you note, if they cancel their subscriptions, there will be fewer resources to do the kind of reporting that the Post does. It does extraordinary investigations. It has held Trump accountable. It's held other powerful individuals and institutions accountable. It does that every day, and it does it in a superb way. They have a tremendously talented staff, and they have the resources to do all of that. Look, if people cancel for a short period of time, like a week, and just send a message that they don't want to see any more of this, okay, I understand that. But canceling for the long term is going to do severe damage to our democracy. There just are not that many news organizations with the kind of resources and the kind of talent that exists at the Washington Post to do substantive, powerful investigations of the sort that we need in a democracy. So I would urge people, if they've canceled, to restore their subscriptions, and they've sent a message. I think the message has been heard, and support this kind of journalism.
Marty Baron, good to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Tonight, Marty gave us a statement about Jeff Bezos' op-ed that read in part this: "One thing I know for sure, refraining from a presidential endorsement within 2 weeks of one of the most highly consequential elections in American history does not inspire trust. It erodes it. That should have been obvious." End quote.